Welcome to the Airgun Show. Right, we've got a bit of admin to kick off tonight's episode. Now, as well as the 10% discount code for subscriptions to Airgun Shooter magazine, which we'll flash up details for a bit later on, we're also offering you the opportunity to access a free digital copy of the magazine, and we'll put up a link so that you can find that. Now, down to the important business of what we've got in tonight's show. Now, in the second section, I'm going to be showing you how to use hold over and hold under to keep shots dead on target over a variety of different ranges. But first up, I'm taking a look at how I use squirrel feeding stations to optimise my pest control. Right, well, as I speak, lockdown restrictions have been eased a little, for some of us at least, and I'm sure that means that many of us are going to be going out doing more squirrel control. Now, we're going to be doing a bit of squirrel shooting in a minute, but I've had a lot of questions regarding the techniques and equipment that I use when I set up feeding stations for squirrel control. So I thought we'd kick off by just running through some of that in a bit more detail than usual. And to start with, we'll take a look at the feeders. Right, well, you can obviously make your own feeders, and I've made a lot of my own, but this particular one is a bought one from Squirrel Management UK, and you can buy them online. It's a pretty good design and a reasonable one to follow, actually, if you're intending to make your own. Now, the basic crux of these feeders is that they're basically a similar design to a bird box with a lid on the top, and you've got an outlet at the front for your feed to spill out of into a feed tray. So, starting at the top, we've got the lid. Now, I've actually replaced the lid that this one came supplied with and put on a lid that just stands out a little bit further, so it helps to keep the rain off of the feed when it's in the tray at the front. It just gives it a little bit more protection. It also had a different closing mechanism on it originally, and what I've done is just put a staple in the top and a bolt in the front, so I can wrap this flexi wire around that's connected to the lid and fasten it quickly and easily with that. You obviously need a means of fastening it to the trees. The best way to do that is a non-invasive way that's not going to leave nails in the tree. So this one's got a couple of nails in the front of the box, so I can just wrap a rope around it, strap it up to a tree. Another really important point is the capacity. I think this feeder probably holds about 6 kilos of peanuts, which is really useful because it saves me from having to constantly keep travelling back and forth to keep it topped up. Reinforcement is another important part of the design. Now, you can see that there's wire mesh all around this feeder and a really strong plate at the front, which I think is actually proofed for FAC rated air guns. Now, more than actually preventing damage by airgun pellets, what you're really trying to stop is the squirrels from chewing through these feeders. They tend to become very frustrated, particularly if the feeder runs empty, and they think they'll find more by chewing into it. And if you haven't got this kind of reinforcement, they'll go straight through the wood and trash your feeder. Finally, you've got the feed tray by the outlet at the front, so it just spills out into that tray. A nice thing with this small tray is that there's not room for squirrels to climb into it and be obstructed by the front wall there. So they'll stand here on this little tray, take the feed, and present you with a really clear shot, either there in front of the plate or on the top, again giving you a really clear shot, and you have a tree trunk as a sound backdrop. In terms of where to put your feeding station, now obviously you want an area that contains plenty of squirrels, and you will identify that either by actually seeing squirrels, by seeing their drays, or by witnessing the damage that they're causing to the trees in that area. You then ideally want to find a tree that's got plenty of wide branches that interconnect with other trees, because that just makes it easier for the squirrels to travel back and forth to your feeding station through the treetops. Now, when I fasten my feeder to a tree, I'm looking to position it about 5 or 6 feet off the ground, so it's not too high for me to refill, but it's high enough to be out of the way of deer. I also want to be able to have a good, clear view of it from wherever I'm going to be hiding, and that's a very important consideration, and obviously making sure that you're taking shots into a relatively safe direction. What I'll do once I've set it up is fill it with feed straight away. Now obviously there's lots of different feeds. You could use peanuts, sunflower seeds, sunflower hearts, maize or wheat. Some are more expensive than others. Obviously wheat's about the cheapest. I most of the time favour peanuts. Now that's the most expensive bait that I will use, but it works absolutely brilliantly. Even if there are other food sources, maybe you've got acorns ripening in the autumn or there are pheasant feeders full of wheat, the squirrels will still come to peanuts. So I've loaded it up and I'll leave it for 3 or 4 days undisturbed. I'll then go back and see if the feed's gone down. Now all being well, the feed will have gone down a bit, and that suggests that a few squirrels have found their way to the feeder, and they're now recognising that as an easy food source. So I will top up the feeder, leave it for a few more days, go back and check it again. Now if after a week the feeder really hasn't received much attention and the feed's barely gone down at all, it's probably in the wrong place and you just need to move it elsewhere. Assuming that all is going well, I'll keep it topped up, and after that first week I know that the squirrels are onto it. I'll go ahead and build a hide, and that hide will probably be about 20-25 metres away. There's no point in making shots harder than they need to be. The squirrels are going to be distracted, so you don't have to be miles away. And I'll then leave it another week for the squirrels to become accustomed to the hide, and also the movement of those squirrels going back and forth, that activity will attract more and more from the surrounding area. And then I'll probably think about starting to shoot about a fortnight after the feeder first went into position. You don't need a particularly fantastic hide. It doesn't have to be incredibly discreet, because it's left in position, the squirrels get the opportunity to become accustomed to it, and they'll soon just start taking it for granted. My one top tip is to never let your feeding station run empty. It will undo all of your hard work. Once you've got those squirrels queuing up for the feed, the last thing you want is for them to turn up, find it empty, head off, find another easy food source and not come back. And that's about it. Now, in my mind, it really is the most effective way of controlling grey squirrels with an air rifle. It pretty much guarantees humane shots at a static target from a very comfortable shooting position. Now, we're going to head over to a feeding station that I've already got up and running, and hopefully we'll bag a few squirrels. Right, so I'm in the hide. You may hear a bit of a noise in the background. It sounds like they're cutting silage in the field behind the woods. I don't expect it's going to bother the squirrels too much. I did say about not having to worry too much about going too far with your hide building. One point I did miss was the fact of having a decent backdrop, and in this case it's a thick tree trunk, which just helps to hide my silhouette when I'm moving around inside of here. I also, looking at the feeder, need to take my own advice, because this one hasn't actually got any reinforcement on the front of it, and you will be able to see the result of that is the fact that the squirrels have chewed away at the outlet and opened that up quite large. I don't want to talk too much while we're in the hide, but very quickly I'm using the FX Impact Mark II, which it's really become my go-to hide shooting gun over the last year because it's just so compact. It's also very accurate. One change that I've made to it, I've gone back to the 2.2 barrel. It's sub 12 foot-pounds, so I've been using it in 1.77, but shooting at relatively close range, I just thought I'd give it a go at 2.2 again. So I've done the barrel change there. That is paired with an MTC Mamba Light scope as usual, and it's held on with my favourite Sports Match scope mounts. I had expected a bit of a wait after the disturbance of our arrival at the hide and all the talking, but today's first squirrel actually turns up pretty quickly. And that is how feeding stations should work. That squirrel came straight in, took a peanut, settled straight on top of the feeder to nibble away at it, offering me a really easy shot, which resulted in a very clean kill. I had to be more patient this time, and we've edited out the long wait, but as expected, another squirrel eventually shows up at the feeder. And there's another one. That one did appear to have clocked us. I expect it probably just saw the glint of light from a lens, but it was poised, it had its leg up like it was ready to bolt away, so I didn't hang around and wait for it to grab a peanut. Took it straight from the feeder, and that's squirrel number 2 in the bag. Waiting around is par for the course for the high tutor, but patience is almost always rewarded when it comes to ambushing squirrels. And sure enough, squirrel number 3 finally decides to put in an appearance. Wow, just like the first squirrel, that one had really read the script. Came in, took a peanut, settled on top of the feeder. I shot it. The pellet caught it an absolute treat. It didn't know what had hit it. And for a moment I didn't even think it was going to fall off the top of the feeder, but it's dropped. That's 3 in the bag. Right, well, it's gone very quiet now. I haven't had a shot for a while. Nikki needs to get away, so we're going to wrap it up here. Quite frankly, the truth is it's probably gone quiet because I'm talking too much, so I'm going to hang on for a bit longer so I can get on with some serious squirrel control. But I hope that we've just demonstrated to you what an effective way of controlling squirrels these feeding stations are. They give you those easy shots from a comfortable shooting position. It's incredibly humane. Go out and give it a try. Squirrel feeding stations in action there, and hopefully we're all going to have the opportunity to do a lot more of that as lockdown restrictions continue to ease.
Check out the great subscription deals for print and digital versions of Airgun Shooter magazine. You won't miss a single issue, even if you can't get to the shops.
We get a lot of questions about how to use aim off, hold over, hold under, and compensating for the effect of the wind. Now, we did make a video looking at this several years ago, but I do think it's worth revisiting just so everybody knows what I'm talking about it when I refer to it in our hunting videos. Now, the setup that I'm going to be using to demonstrate this today is the brilliant Vyrak HW110 Deluxe kit from Pelpax, who can deliver direct to your door. Now, apart from a fantastic airgun, this kit also includes an adjustable bipod and even a 3-litre air bottle. Now, most significantly for today and using aim off, it also comes with a zoom scope that's got a mil-dot reticle. Now, that whole package, which even includes a hard case, costs less than £1,000. We reviewed it a few months ago, so do check that out. Right, back to aim off. The first thing to remember is that an airgun pellet does not travel dead straight like a laser beam, but actually has a curved trajectory. Now, in simplified terms, and assuming that you zero at 30 metres, here is roughly what happens. Right, because the barrel is below the line of sight, the pellet actually emerges below the crosshair, so initially it will strike low. It then rises up to correspond with the centre of the crosshairs at around 12 to 15 metres. The pellet then continues to rise a little more, so at 20-25 metres it will then be striking a little bit high. Gravity then begins to pull it down and it will correspond with the zero that you dialed in at 30 metres. Beyond 30 metres, the pellet continues to be dragged down by gravity, so you can expect it to hit low at 35 to 40 metres. After that, it continues to run out of steam until it tumbles down to the ground. Now, the actual curve of the trajectory depends on many factors, including muzzle energy, calibre, and the design and weight of pellet that you choose to use. The best way to plot the flight path of whatever pellet you decide to use with your combo is to set up paper targets at 5 metre intervals from 10 metres out to 40 metres or however far you intend to shoot. Aim for the dead centre of the bull with every shot and you'll be able to see exactly how high or low the pellet is striking over any given distance. Once you know where your pellet is striking, you can then use the reference points on your scope's reticle to compensate for its rise and fall. You use hold over when the pellet is striking low and hold under when it's striking high. Of course, to get this right, you need to know how far away the target is. Now, you can do this by learning how to estimate range by eye. You can pace out the distance to your target, or you can go for the easy option and use a laser rangefinder. Using aim off to compensate for the effect of the wind works along similar principles. You aim off to the right when the wind is pushing from right to left, and you aim off to the left when the wind is pushing from left to right. The amount of aim off you need to use can vary greatly depending on the strength and angle of the wind, and the other factors of pellet weight, design, calibre and muzzle energy that I mentioned earlier on. And of course, you may also have to factor in hold over or hold under depending on the range. Learning how to use aim off to compensate for the effect of the wind can take a lot of time to get right, but it really is worth putting in the practice. Hold over and hold under tend to be quicker and easier to master. One thing that really is worth bearing in mind is that the examples that I've shown in this video on paper targets only show single shots being taken. When you're out on the range doing it for yourself, try shooting groups of 4 or 5 shots at each range. This will prevent the odd stray pellet from messing up the amount of compensation that you think you need to give your shots. Now, learning how to fully take advantage of aim off can make a huge difference to your shooting. If you aren't doing it already, get out there and give it a go.
Look out for the new and improved Airgun Shooter magazine, packed full of technique, gear and insight from some of the best shooters in the industry. Brand new look and free video content. Pick up your copy today in stores or online.
That's all for this week, but as ever, we'll be back again in a fortnight. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you aren't already a member of the BASC, have a look at their website and check out the benefits that you could be taking advantage of through Airgun membership. And also remember to check out those Airgun Shooter magazine offers that I mentioned at the start of the show. I'll catch up with you next time.